Elias had spent the last 4 months aboard the Veyron station, a sprawling orbital hub circling the gas giant Korath. The station was known across human trade routes as a place of wonder and strict order, a jewel of the alien coalition known as the Thrin Dominion. As a human technician, Elias' job was simple: maintain life support systems, repair minor malfunctions, and follow protocols with military precision. At least, that was how it was supposed to be. The corridors of Veyron were a labyrinth of polished metal, glowing panels, and softly humming conduits. It was easy to get lost if you weren't careful, and Elias was admittedly not careful. On this particular cycle, the station had been unusually quiet. Most alien personnel were off on diplomatic errands or auditing nearby systems. Elias had been sent to check a minor energy fluctuation in the northern wing, a routine job. He walked briskly, clipboard in hand, following the schematics etched into his mind. He paused in front of a door he hadn't seen before. It was unmarked. The panel next to it flickered weakly, as if hesitant to acknowledge his presence. The station had thousands of such doors, but something about this one caught his attention. He was curious, not dangerous, just curious. "Probably maintenance," he muttered to himself, pressing the panel. The door slid open silently, revealing a room dimly lit with pale, golden light. Elias stepped in, expecting perhaps a storage chamber or a control hub. Instead, he found two figures already inside, seated across from each other at a long, low table. Their skin shimmered faintly under the light, a color that reminded him vaguely of burnished copper. Their eyes were large, almond-shaped, and intelligent in a way that made him feel small. He froze for a heartbeat. Neither of them rose, but both fixed him with a calm, unblinking gaze. He realized too late that the door had slid shut behind him with a soft click. The lock indicator on the panel blinked red. "Ah," Elias said, attempting humor. "I think I came in the wrong room." She did not speak, but the other's voice filled the room, not in sound, but directly in his mind. Elias recoiled, startled by the telepathic intrusion. "You are human," she said. Her voice was melodic, almost hypnotic, but it carried weight. "You do not belong here. Except you. I'm not here to interfere, I just—" "Promise," she repeated. "Humans make many promises. They are unpredictable. If there's a problem, I can fix it. I can help. Yet you defy calculation." Elias sensed a subtle shift in the air, a tension that was almost tangible. He realized that the aliens were not just observing him. They were weighing him, testing him, measuring the magnitude of his unpredictability. "You do not fear," the second alien finally said, her voice almost approving. "Most humans would collapse in this situation. It adjusts for probability, for behavior. It expects certain outcomes from every entity. Your presence creates errors." Something he could not explain was happening, something beyond any human understanding of technology. "I didn't mean to. I'm just here to do my job," he said. "You cannot leave," the second alien said simply, "until we decide what you are." He had always prided himself on thinking under pressure. "Then tell me," he said, "what do you need to know? What makes me special? You do not fit our models of behavior. But you are still a threat." He had read about the Thrin Dominion's reliance on perfect modeling, the way they calculated everything from trade routes to personal interactions. He realized he was not just in the wrong room, he was standing at the intersection of history and evolution. His very existence was a disruption. "I'm not trying to destabilize anything," he said, keeping his tone calm. "I fix problems." "I can help." "Study me?" he asked. "Yes," the first alien said. "Until we know what you are capable of and why the station reacts to you, you are contained." The room seemed to hum with energy, the panels flickering more rapidly, the golden light pulsing slightly. Elias realized he was not just trapped physically. The station itself was responding to him. Every instinct screamed that this moment was pivotal, that every decision he made would matter far more than it should have. Elias swallowed, straightened his back, and met their gaze. "Okay," he said simply. "Then let's find out what happens next." They might also teach the Thrin something they had long forgotten. That unpredictability was not weakness, but power. The door remained closed. The room's hum intensified, as if the station itself was holding its breath. And Elias, the human technician, realized that he had just stepped into a room that no one was meant to enter, and that leaving would require more than skill or luck. It would require him to be exactly what he was, human. Elias had settled as best as one could into the strange rhythm of the room. The golden light was steady now, but the air seemed charged, almost alive. Every flicker of the panels, every hum of the conduits made him aware of something beyond ordinary perception. He had learned that here on the Veyron station nothing was ordinary. The first alien, whose name he would later learn was Lyris, stood silently by the table, her long fingers tracing invisible patterns over the surface. The second, Surith, leaned back in a chair, observing him with a mixture of curiosity and calculation. Neither spoke aloud, yet their thoughts pressed on his mind in subtle waves, like a gentle current tugging him toward understanding. "Why do you want to know about me?" Elias finally asked, breaking the silence. His voice sounded louder than he intended, echoing slightly off the walls. Lyris moved gracefully to a panel embedded in the floor. With a gesture, the panel lit up with intricate symbols that Elias had never seen before. "You are human," she said, her voice calm but filled with weight. "We have accounted for all entities on this station, yet you deviate. You do not follow patterns, you act on impulse, yet you survive. You make choices that cannot be predicted. This is unusual. Perhaps, but your usefulness is not guaranteed. You are dangerous because the station responds to you in ways we cannot control." He had always known humans were considered minor in interstellar politics, but this was different. He wasn't minor, he was an anomaly, something the aliens had never seen, and the station itself seemed to recognize it. "So, I'm not just trapped in here, I'm part of the system?" he asked, choosing his words carefully. Surith leaned forward, resting her hands on the table. "Part of the system is not a term we would use lightly. You are the missing variable, something we did not anticipate." Maybe he thought that was what they were realizing now. "Why are you showing me this?" he asked. "Why tell me I'm dangerous if you're not going to let me leave?" "Your choices introduce uncertainty we cannot allow until we know the extent of the effect. Your species may be chaotic, but chaos has purpose. You are unexpected evolution in motion. If I'm a correction, what do you want me to do?" "We must determine if your unpredictability is safe," Lyris said finally. "You will remain here until we can measure the effects fully." This was no longer about leaving a room. This was about understanding a species that prided itself on foresight and surviving while being the variable they could not predict. The room seemed to respond to the unspoken tension. Lights flickered, panels hummed, and a faint vibration ran through the floor. Elias realized that the station itself was alive, in a sense. It was reacting to him, adjusting to his presence, and the aliens were merely mediators of its response. "I understand," he said carefully. "You want to study me. You want to see how I affect the station. But what happens if I make a mistake, if I do something you can't predict?" "The station will record every reaction. Your choices will be analyzed. You are significant." He realized that the aliens were not cruel. They were meticulous, almost painfully careful. Their civilization depended on certainty, and he was the one thing that refused to be certain. "I need to understand your thought process," Lyris said suddenly. She moved to a panel on the wall and gestured. The symbols shifted, forming patterns that Elias could barely comprehend. They seemed almost alive, twisting and folding in ways that defied logic. "Show us how you react. Speak, act, think. Do not hide your impulses. They are the key." He started speaking, describing a series of hypothetical situations, his reasoning, his choices. The aliens watched intently, their expressions unreadable. Sometimes Surith would tilt her head, almost imperceptibly impressed. Lyris's eyes would narrow, calculating, recording. The room hummed in response, the lights shifting with the ebb and flow of his explanations. "You are illogical," Lyris said finally after what felt like hours. "And yet your decisions produce results. Our civilization has relied on prediction for centuries. We no longer evolve. We maintain. You force reconsideration. You are not a threat because of malice. You are a threat because of possibility." And he, a single human, was teaching them something they had long forgotten. That uncertainty could lead to growth. Hours passed, though time had no clear measure in the strange space of the room. The aliens continued their observations, but now there was less tension, more curiosity. They asked questions, challenging his reasoning, forcing him to respond in ways he had never been trained for. And he did. Every instinct, every intuitive leap, every stubborn human trait was on display. At one point, Surith stood and moved closer to him. Elias felt a slight pulse in the room, as if the station itself recognized the shift. "You may survive this test," she said. "Not because we allow it, but because your species adapts in ways we cannot calculate." "That's what we do." and he had begun to prove, simply by existing, that humans were more than minor players in the galaxy. The room fell into silence again. Elias sat, exhausted but alert, sensing the strange balance of power shifting subtly. He understood now that he was not a prisoner in the traditional sense. He was a catalyst, a variable that could change the course of events if he navigated carefully. And as the golden light continued to pulse around him, Elias smiled faintly. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but unpredictability could also be a strength, and he intended to use it. Elias had grown accustomed to the peculiar rhythm of the room, yet each moment brought something unexpected. The golden light that bathed the chamber seemed almost alive, pulsing faintly with the station's silent, subtle heartbeat. He had learned to listen for these cues, to watch for the tiniest flicker in the panels or hum in the air. Each signal told him that the aliens were observing, not just his actions, but the very way he thought. Lyris and Surith sat across from him as before, but the dynamic had shifted. The tension from the first hours had softened into a cautious curiosity. The aliens were no longer strictly interrogating him. They were studying him, probing his reactions in a controlled, almost scientific way. Elias felt the weight of their attention pressing on his mind, yet he had begun to feel capable, even empowered. He had learned to adapt. "You understand now," Lyris said, her voice calm, almost musical, "that your presence creates effects we cannot predict. I cause anomalies. So my unpredictability isn't just a problem for you, it's a problem for the station itself." The station, a massive orbital hub housing thousands of beings, was reacting to him, not because he had touched anything, but simply because he existed in its space. He imagined the calculations running behind the panels, the algorithms struggling to integrate a human anomaly. "So what happens now?" he asked. Surith's gaze softened slightly. "Now we observe. Your choices will determine the effect. Your actions, your reasoning, will guide the station's response." He shifted his position, walked along the panels, and lightly tapped controls, watching as the lights flickered in response. Sometimes the floor pulsed beneath his steps, almost as if it was measuring his balance or perhaps his intent. The aliens watched silently, their faces unreadable, though he sensed subtle signs of intrigue in their posture. "You are testing," Lyris said. "Yes," Elias admitted. "I need to see how far this system can go." Then suddenly the golden lights flickered violently and the hum of the panels rose sharply. Elias stumbled slightly, catching himself on the edge of a table. He looked around, alarmed. What's happening?" he asked, voice tense. Lyris's eyes narrowed. "The station itself is reacting. Your movements, your thoughts, your choices. These are creating feedback loops we cannot fully anticipate." He had expected tension, observation, maybe even a subtle test, but this was something entirely different. The station was alive in ways he could not have imagined, and he was at its center. He realized that the room was no longer just a chamber, it had become an experiment in itself. I don't know what to do," he admitted, though he tried to keep his voice steady. "You must adapt," Lyris said. "You must continue to act naturally. Do not fear the response. It is part of your role as the anomaly." He tapped panels in sequences that made no logical sense, spoke aloud hypothetical scenarios, and even stepped into areas where sensors blinked with warning. Each time the room responded, lights dimming, the floor vibrating, panels rearranging their symbols. And each time the aliens observed, silently recording, silently measuring. "You are capable of improvisation beyond expectation," Surith said finally. "Your actions influence the station in ways we cannot calculate, and yet the results are coherent. You are not a risk in the way we feared. You are a potential solution." He had never imagined that simply being human could be considered a solution to anything, let alone to a civilization that prided itself on perfection. "You are beginning to understand your effect," Lyris said, her tone softer than before. "But there is more. The station is only the first layer. Your influence may extend beyond this room. We must determine the limits of your presence." He tested panels, examined conduits, and even manipulated energy flows within the limits of his knowledge. Each time he acted, the station responded, not chaotically, but dynamically, adjusting, learning, and adapting alongside him. He began to sense a rhythm, a strange harmony between human instinct and alien precision. At one point, the floor panels beneath him pulsed sharply, and a holographic display projected symbols into the air. Elias recognized some of the shapes as logic sequences, others as behavioral models. But some patterns were entirely new, evolving as he observed them. The station was, in essence, thinking alongside him, responding to his unpredictability. Surith's eyes widened slightly, though her posture remained controlled. It adapts faster than we anticipated. Your choices are amplifying its learning rate. He had stumbled into a room by accident, yet now he was shaping the future of an entire alien civilization, simply by being human. The thought was dizzying, but he focused, drawing on instinct and logic in equal measure. He had to remain careful. Influence was a powerful tool, but one misstep could destabilize the station entirely. "You are aware," Surith said, "that your actions may force the station to evolve beyond our control. We must observe closely. But maybe the station doesn't need to follow old rules. Maybe it just needs to learn from us." Elias could feel the station pulsing beneath him, as if acknowledging his words. The aliens watched him, their expressions a mixture of calculation, caution, and curiosity. For the first time, he sensed a shift, not just in the room, but in them. They were beginning to see the value of unpredictability, of human ingenuity. Hours passed. The tests, subtle as they were, had revealed something profound. Humans were not minor, not predictable, not disposable. They were catalysts. Their choices, their intuition, their adaptability, these qualities could force even the most rigid systems to evolve. And Elias, trapped in a room he had entered by mistake, was proving the point. Finally, Surith spoke. "Your influence has been significant. We have never encountered a human who affects the station in this manner. It may be a turning point." "That's the point." And as he sat there amidst the golden light and flickering panels, Elias understood something profound. He was no longer just a technician. He was a variable, a catalyst, a human who, by existing, was teaching an alien species the true power of unpredictability. The station itself seemed to acknowledge it. Somewhere deep in its circuits and conduits, the pulse grew steadier, stronger, and more deliberate. It was learning. It was evolving. And Elias, the human, had become the center of its change. Elias had begun to understand the strange rhythm of the room and the station itself. Every pulse of light, every hum in the floor panels, was a signal he could now read, like a code written in electricity and probability. Yet understanding did not lessen the tension. He was not merely a guest. He was a catalyst in a system that had never encountered something like him. The weight of that realization pressed on him constantly. Lyris and Surith had settled into an uneasy balance of observation and calculation. Surith's curiosity had grown more apparent, subtle shifts in her posture and eye movements betraying her fascination with Elias' unpredictability. Lyris, however, remained cautious, her rigid focus on maintaining the station's integrity unchanged. Elias sensed the tension between the two, a silent disagreement that hovered over every word and gesture. "You have adapted well," Surith said, her voice a calm hum in his mind. "Your influence continues to grow. The station responds to you in ways beyond our expectation. This unpredictability, while intriguing, cannot be uncontrolled. One misstep and the system could destabilize entirely." He had been trapped here by accident, yet he was already shaping the destiny of the Thrin Dominion's orbital hub. "I don't intend to destabilize anything," he said, trying to assert his calm. "But I also won't limit myself to what you expect. Humans survive by adapting. That's how we thrive. That is what we are observing. You force us to consider possibilities beyond prediction. Perhaps you are a key to growth." He was human, yes, but he could use his reasoning to influence not just the station, but the alien observers. "What if stability doesn't require rigid control?" he asked. "What if it can coexist with unpredictability? Guidance is risky. Integration may be impossible without full understanding. One error could propagate across the entire system." The station itself seemed to acknowledge his words, subtle flickers in the panels responding to his tone. He realized that it was not only observing his actions, but also evaluating his intent. The aliens were doing the same, but the station's response was unpredictable even to them. Hours passed. Elias moved deliberately among the panels, manipulating energy flows within his understanding, suggesting minor adjustments to the system that the aliens had never considered. Each action caused small but measurable changes in the station's behavior, lights adjusting their rhythm, conduits humming differently, displays shifting in ways that hinted at new logic. "You are remarkable," Surith said, her voice softer now. Not because of power, but because of adaptability. You do not merely react, you anticipate without calculation. Her concern was clear. The station's response was unpredictable, and so was Elia's. She did not yet fully trust the outcome. A sudden vibration ran through the floor, sharper than before. Elia stumbled, catching himself on the table. Lights flickered violently, panels shifted faster than he could follow. The aliens exchanged a glance, their mental communication swift, almost urgent. "The feedback loop is intensifying," Lyra said, her voice tight with concern. "Your actions are generating higher-order effects. The station may react beyond our control. The station is learning from you, faster than we anticipated. Its systems are evolving in response to human unpredictability." And every action he took rippled outward, changing the balance of the aliens' authority, the station's stability, and perhaps even the fate of the surrounding space. He took a deep breath and focused, slowing his movements, observing the station's subtle shifts. If the system was learning, then he could guide it. If his choices influenced the outcome, then he could stabilize it step by step. "Calm the system," he said aloud, more to himself than anyone else. He adjusted a sequence of controls, carefully aligning energy flows and redirecting minor currents. The vibration eased, the panels settled, and the lights dimmed to a steady glow once more. Surith's eyes gleamed with approval. "Impressive. Your intuition guides the station effectively. You are not merely a variable, you are an agent of control. We can maintain stability while allowing flexibility. It allows us to grow, to find solutions no rigid system could calculate. Further action must be deliberate." Panels stabilized faster, conduits hummed in steady rhythms, and symbols on displays began to evolve into patterns that suggested efficiency improvements the aliens themselves had not anticipated. "You are extraordinary," Surith said quietly, almost reverently. "Not because of physical skill, but because of thought, instinct, and adaptability. Your presence challenges us, yet also illuminates new possibilities. And sometimes we teach others to do the same." The subtle disagreement between them shifted again. Surith leaning toward embracing human adaptability, Lyris insisting on caution. And somewhere deep in the system, the station itself seemed to respond, learning from his unpredictability, evolving quietly, patiently, and deliberately. Elias understood then that he was no longer just a trapped technician. He was a force of change, a human catalyst shaping the balance of a civilization in real time. Hours turned into what felt like a full cycle, yet time seemed almost meaningless in the golden-lit chamber. Elias had not only survived, he had begun to influence the very structure and thought of the station. His human traits, curiosity, intuition, adaptability were proving not merely effective but essential. Finally, Surith spoke, her voice calm but filled with weight. "Your presence has initiated processes we cannot fully calculate. You are no longer a variable, you are an influencer. But one whose actions must continue to be guided. The system is still sensitive to disruption. Observation remains critical." The station seemed to acknowledge him, its circuits and conduits moving in harmony with his presence. Elias realized that he had not only survived the room, he had begun to change it, to shape the future of the aliens who had once confined him. And as he sat there, golden light bathing his features, Elias understood something profound. Unpredictability was not weakness, it was strength. Humanity's greatest power lay not in rigid control or calculation, but in adaptability, intuition, and courage. And in that quiet, humming room, surrounded by beings who had once seemed untouchable, Elias, the human technician, had begun to prove it. Elias had spent what felt like endless hours in the golden-lit room, yet in that time he had learned more than he had in months aboard Veyron Station. He had tested the limits of the station, his own instincts, and the patience of Lyris and Surith. What had begun as an accidental intrusion had become something far greater, a demonstration of what humans could do when faced with a system that did not understand them. The station hummed softly, pulsing in response to the subtle movements and decisions he made. The panels glowed faintly, the conduits vibrated in rhythm, and every sensor seemed to track him not just as an entity, but as an agent of change. He understood now that his unpredictability had shifted more than the room. It had altered the very behavior of the station itself. Surith moved closer, her copper-toned skin reflecting the pulsing light. "Your influence has been profound," she said. "The station is responding in ways beyond our prediction. You have changed it simply by existing within it." Every action has been deliberate, measured, but still human. I adapt, yes, but I do not overreach. I work with what the system allows, not against it. Flexibility can exist alongside structure. The aliens had no intention of opening the door until they were certain the station and themselves could accept the change he represented. And yet, he also understood that they were no longer purely hostile or fearful. They had begun to recognize human potential in ways their species had long forgotten. "I understand why you haven't let me leave," he said, "and I respect it. But I also think it's time to see if the system can accept me outside this room. If humans truly are catalysts, then the next step is integration, not containment. It can also guide adaptation. Humans survive by adjusting, by observing and responding. I can show the station how to work with me, not against me. We will allow you to exit, but you will proceed under guidance. The station will monitor and respond. Any deviation and containment may be reestablished." Every step he took would ripple through the station, influencing systems, panels, and even the aliens who had once detained him. He took his first step carefully, then another, feeling the subtle responses beneath the floor. The station seemed almost to guide him, adjusting to his presence as he moved. Surith followed, close but unobtrusive, while Lyris remained near the doorway, watching him with a critical eye. "Proceed carefully," she warned. "Your choices will continue to influence not only the station but the perception of your species." One careful choice at a time, he could prove that humans were not minor players in the galaxy. They were catalysts. As he moved down the corridor, he noticed subtle changes. Lights adjusted rhythmically to his pace. Panels along the walls displayed symbols that seemed to evolve in real time, patterns forming and reforming in response to his presence. He realized that the station was no longer merely a neutral environment. It was alive in a sense, responding, adapting, learning from him. Surith's voice sounded in his mind, calm and focused. "You are no longer merely contained. You are integrated cautiously. The station recognizes your role. Your species is significant." I think we both learned something then. Humans adapt. Stations can too. Maybe it's time someone did. Along the way, he encountered other aliens and humans, all going about their work. Yet he felt a subtle awareness in them, a recognition of change he could not fully articulate. The station itself had shifted, its heartbeat, its rhythm, its responsiveness, all altered by his presence. The once rigid environment now allowed flexibility, adaptation, and growth. Surith finally spoke aloud, her melodic voice filling the corridor. "The station now perceives your species not as minor variables but as catalysts. Your presence has shifted the foundation of its systems." Yet here, in a room he had entered by mistake, he had proven that human adaptability, instinct, and ingenuity were forces capable of reshaping even the most precise and controlled environment. Lyris remained silent, walking slightly behind. Elias sensed that she was still cautious, yet he could detect a subtle change in her perspective. She no longer saw him purely as a threat. He was a challenge, yes, but also an opportunity, a reminder that even the most advanced civilization could learn from what it had once dismissed. Finally, they reached the main atrium of the station. Elias paused, looking around. He could see ships docking outside the massive observation windows, aliens moving efficiently along corridors, and humans performing maintenance. The station was alive with activity, yet he realized that it was no longer the same station he had accidentally entered hours or days ago. The golden light that had filled the chamber now seemed to pulse faintly throughout the atrium, subtle but perceptible. Panels adjusted to his presence, displays shifted their patterns, and conduits hummed in response to his movements. The station had evolved alongside him. Surith's voice sounded one last time in his mind. "You may leave freely now, but know this, your species has made a permanent impact. The Thrin Dominion will never view humans as they did before." Now those traits had proven their worth on an interstellar scale. Lyris finally spoke aloud. "Proceed, but remain aware that influence carries responsibility. Your choices will continue to resonate beyond this station." The station's systems responded fluidly, no longer fighting his presence but integrating it. He felt a profound sense of accomplishment, not for personal gain, but for what humanity could represent. As he reached the final door leading to the docking bay, he paused, looking back toward the golden-lit room where it had all begun. Lyris and Surith watched him silently, their presence a reminder of the challenge he had overcome. He realized that they, too, had changed. Their perspective on humans, once limited by calculation and prediction, had expanded. They now understood that unpredictability could be a source of strength, not weakness. The door slid open, revealing the docking bay and the vast expanse of space beyond. Ships glimmered in the light of distant stars. Elias took a deep breath, stepping forward. Every instinct, every lesson learned in that strange room guided his movements. He was not just a technician anymore. He was a human who had proven, through thought, action, and adaptability, that his species could challenge even the most rigid systems. As he walked among the bustling personnel, he felt a quiet sense of pride. Humans were more than minor players in the galaxy. They were catalysts, agents of change, and in the right circumstances, the driving force behind evolution itself. Elias realized that he had not only survived the room and the station, but he had reshaped it in ways no one, not even the Thrin Dominion, could have predicted. He had become proof that human ingenuity, resilience, and unpredictability were forces to be reckoned with. And somewhere deep in the circuits, conduits, and panels of the station, the systems continued to learn, evolve, and adapt, forever influenced by a single human who had walked into the wrong room and refused to leave without leaving his mark.